So with the struggle of our girls trying to get them a voice to be able to function in Western society, how did you find that with your creative stuff? You finding your voice and moving away from all your diplomatic work into your creative stuff?
When I entered a non-diverse, working space, my response to that was to try and make myself the same as my surroundings. So when I entered the public sector, as much as I really, enjoyed my time there and I loved the work and I loved the aims and the ethos of public service, which is about, being involved in the decision making for our country, I entered an environment that didn't reflect me. And I responded to that by just trying to de-emphasize the parts of myself that were different. And, I went on that journey for, quite a long time before realizing, actually, it's the parts of me that are different that are my advantage. It's the parts of me that are different that are the best parts of me. And so I guess the other, side of that is that I am actually a very creative person, but no one in my life up until a certain point knew that I'm someone who likes to sing and write music and write about various things. But I turned to creativity when I was facing challenges in my professional life and when I needed an outlet to express what I was feeling.
And the thing is, you suppressed all of that stuff because your role as a main breadwinner, you had to provide for us. You had to make mortgage payments and all that kind of stuff. So in order to do that, you had to work, and you didn't have the time to do your creative stuff. So just with the birth of Misadventures, that came through from your work experience. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I wrote Misadventures at a time when I was disappointed that I'd missed out on several promotions. And I guess it was part of, it came from quite a painful, period in my working life. And it was sort of part of me trying to understand myself. And I guess the conclusion that I came to was that leadership looks different to different people, and certain traits that we value in the Pacific context, like service and humility, a Balingi panel is not necessarily going to recognise that as leadership. And where I got to in my career was that I didn't need that external validation because I myself had confidence and I knew that I was a leader in my family and in my community. And I wanted to share that experience and do so in such a way that was not about telling people, but showing people this is what leadership can look like as well. And I'm really glad that we backed ourselves and took the leap and made the series, because when we played it to audiences in New Zealand, Australia and the Pacific, people loved it, and they could relate to it because it's a struggle that many of us have faced.
For sure. That was the best part of making the series, was having the audience Q&As afterwards, having people tell us that they felt like they'd been seen, they felt like they saw themselves in our in Misadventures, so that was real cool. Yeah, one other thing, because that was personal growth for you to write that stuff, but for me, coming on as a producer, I, really, that was quite daunting for me to try and make that work for you, because I felt a lot of pressure to jump back in that workforce and try and bring everything together to produce that TV series for you, or that web series for you. But I guess that was a bit of a sacrifice for us. I was away from you and the girls for a few months in New Zealand, trying to get everything together and trying to upskill and learn everything on the internet and how to put a production together. But one thing I found was that a lot of the skills that I needed for production, we already had those skills, you know, from all of our diplomatic work, from, you know, throwing parties and making connections and that kind of stuff. So, and I found that finding the right people to help us with our vision was probably the most important part. Finding people who knew what they were doing and giving them the freedom to make your work come to fruition. So that was a real growth for me as well, to jump back out there.
Yeah, and I guess at the time it served a number of purposes, because quite often when you're being posted overseas, you're not, you know, it's very difficult to find work in your field. And so, you know, you had been a stay-at-home dad for a number of years by that point, and we had been thinking about ways to reinvigorate your career. And one of the ideas that came up was film school, right? And those, our friends who had been involved in film sort of said, oh, well, you know, if you have an idea, then maybe you should just back yourself and learn on the job. So, yeah, I'm like, that was another, you know, really great outcome of producing our own web series, was that you had the opportunity to get some experience, not only on your CV, but to prove it to yourself, because I know that you were hesitant, but I knew you could do it, and you totally did.
Thank you.